Hello, hello. Let's see if we can make any kind of progress on our mushroom slug. We got a nice little shape in the butt so far today. And the ears are looking like they're going to have the right shape. I've got a plan for how I'm going to do that. I'm going to put an underside. I'm going to sew that all together on the inside here. So it'll be a little simple seam. I think with the way that this is built, we only have to figure out the back of the neck, which looks from here like I just have to create a wedge. That'll give me a good solid neck shape on the back, and that'll distinguish the head part from the back of the neck. Let's see if I restuff this. I got to try and figure out a good position here because as I'm kind of working, I'm realizing how close this is, and it gets kind of hard to see what I'm working on. So I'm trying to make this into a plush. We've gone through an entire build prototype. We've now changed the shape. We've got a nice rounded backside. We've got a few other details that I might adjust for the belly here, maybe round this out a little bit better. So we've got quite a bit of progress on making this figured out. Today, if I am right, I should be able to work on trying to figure out this little chunk right here, which isn't much. I just have to plan it out so that it works appropriately. But I'm also looking at the back of the head here, and I have to make sure if it's going to take the right shape when I stuff it. And it looks like it will. I was afraid that there would be a crease here, and even if there is a crease, I think that'll look cute. It'll have a good neck shape to it, so I won't have to worry too much. But trying to turn something from a drawing, this is just an idea that I had in my head, just a creepy little thing that we decided to turn into a mushroom slug, and trying to like piece out the idea. So I've got this rough sketches of where I wanted things to be. I want to have the crest of it to be a cap. So we're going to make that a mushroom cap. And then we're going to do the same thing with the backside. So I had to make sure that I separated these pieces out. I also did not want them to be connected together. So I had to make sure that the head ended and that there was a space where I could put the back section. Now I'm looking at this and I'm wondering if maybe what I can do is adjust the pattern so that I've got a little bit wider on the neck instead of adding an extra piece. Maybe what I can do is change the shape of the back of the neck right here so that I can connect it. Now I know that there's a whole lot of steps involved in this that make it seem kind of weird, and it is very difficult. Trying to turn a drawing into a brand new plush, there's so many different fails and attempts that's going to happen in that process. I mean, just the shape of the backside alone took 3 or 4 attempts. That was cutting this apart, changing all the little details, even before I put it together, or even before I made separate patterns, because as it came across, I realized that there were some things that just didn't land. So I think I've got a pretty decent shape here. I might adjust right here just a little bit. So let me go ahead and find my pattern. I thought my pattern was sitting right here, but what winds up happening is over the course of a week, when I am working from one project to the other, I wind up moving all my stuff around. And I suddenly realized I forgot to grab my pattern like I normally do. Here it is, way over here. All right, so here's my pattern, piece by piece, all these little pieces adding up to make one plush. And what happens is, as I make them, I will, for example, this is my body. I have to account for the fact that when I sew everything, there's going to be a 1/4 inch loss. So it makes it smaller. And of course, this is the size I wanted it. I knew I wanted just a handheld size, something that would be kind of small. And I could always make it bigger by sizing up the pattern, by taking it to like a copy store or something like that. So I'm looking here. I did not have time to make any adjustments over the course of the week. The city water main busted a couple days ago. So we've been kind of trying to boil water, take care of the baby. We got a 4-year-old, so I've been trying to make everything a little bit safer for him. We have to take some extra steps to make sure that he's clean. So that's been a bit of a process. Let's see, try more views, keep it up. Yeah, but I'm trying to make sure I pay enough attention to the screen, but the problem is I have to look over the screen for it. So here's what's going on, right? As of right now, I've got a little bit of an extra protrusion right here. Now that could be partly because of the way I've sewn it, because this material stretches a lot more than my furry minky material. This is just a cotton sheet that I used as scrap, but this is the stuff that I will be using in the end. This is kind of bright. Let's see if I can find something a little bit easier to see with. So you can see this is very fuzzy. This is a lot more sturdy. So I have to make all kinds of little adjustments as I go. In this case, since I'm looking right here, I don't like quite how it looks like it comes out right here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by just adding just a little bit less of a curve here. And things like this add up. It's just a tiny difference, but each of these tiny little differences add up in lots of different ways. The way that the fabric pushes out when you fill it from the inside with the fluff, you'll notice that all these little adjustments kind of show up. So my hope is I've cut just enough off so that what will happen is it'll curve around a little bit better. I'm looking at the back here now. I think that sticks out just a little bit too much. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and pull this in right at about that point to make it a little bit easier on myself. I'm folding it in half. I'll show you what this wedge does in just a moment. Let's go ahead and I'm going to round it out just a little bit. Hopefully that keeps that from being such a hump at the top, and we'll bring it down to be more of a smooth round. The idea is that in the end, this section is going to be a mushroom cap, and the plan has been to use the red cap with the white dots. But if you look here, you can see that it kind of rounds a lot more at the bottom. And what happens is when I add this wedge, oops, let me go ahead and unfold this here. When I add a wedge into it, it allows the fabric to wrap a little bit more. It kind of shortens the middle and allows a lot more shape to be taken. But if you do not do things like this, if you want to leave it flat, that's where you get these little bulges and a little difference in the shape. And the good news is you have options to do both. In this circumstance, I just kind of want to bring it down a little bit, and it'll help kind of round it evenly so that the whole body has more better shape. In my sketch here, which now I have to move everything else around, in my sketch you can see that I intended it to be just a little bit flatter. So that's why I want this to come down. My hope is it'll look just a little bit rounded like the top of a mushroom, but at this bulge is still more of a hump than it is a mushroom cap. So a lot of little changes. Again, all I did was bring that section down a teeny bit, drop all my pattern on the floor. There we go. So all I did was bring this down just a teeny bit and change the shape of the wedge. Let me see if I can set this up a little bit better so you can see. Because every little bit's going to add up. So I'm going to wind up making another prototype from this material. But before I do, I'm going to keep everything marked, keep everything separated. And I'm actually going to try and see what happens with the face. I think that I already know what's going to happen. My intention is to put a rounded part right here, and then I'm going to start attaching tentacles to it. I don't have to do each individual tentacle, but I have a few plans on ways that I could do this. I could do a star-shaped piece, basically just have the tentacles all in one piece so they come out very similar to that, and then sew it to the top and fold these all forward. But I think it's going to look a lot better if I just have a solid round piece like this and just sew on the tentacles afterwards. So that's going to be what we're aiming for. I also have it drawn with a lip, and I've realized over the course of making this prototype that I'm going to have to bring the lip out all of this. My thought is that what I want to do is, I'll show you basically, I'm going to fold in so that it has a nice little ledge, which will be our lip. You can see that there's that little bit. And I'm going to sew right at the edge of that where my circle goes. And that should create an overlap that'll look more like a mouth opening, and that will make the tentacles the inside of the mouth. But I'm also seeing that as an example, I'm going to have to make a bit of a wider edge right here that will allow that to have excess to fold in. And that's not going to be much of a problem. I'm just going to basically curve it out a little bit more. And in fact, to help me remember, I'm going to write that down. Let's see. Bigger lip. And what I will do is I will just trace all this and extend that section. And in fact, while I'm kind of here, there's a couple other little things that I have learned. Like, for example, I don't need that anymore. I can cut that completely off. That's going to be a section that I realized before, but I also remember that I have the idea to make a little triangle for this section So I would bring out a little bit of a triangle in two different directions. So what I'll try and do is I will do a vague mark for where I think that's going to go so that I know to add a triangle. Say add. It's because I'm writing on my hand. That's why my handwriting is kind of bad anyways, but hey, Cat B, I'm glad you made it. And basically, wow, my camera is really trying not to focus. I wonder if it's because of where I've got my lights. There we go. Let's try some adjusting here. The last time I went live, it told me that I was too blurry, inactive, all kinds of stuff. So now I've got the idea that I'm going to try and add a section here. So what will happen is I'll be able to sew to the bottom of the back of the head. Wow, my lights are really trying to mess with me today. Let me see if I can do some adjusting. I gotta try and turn it down. Oh, that's off. My buttons on my lamp are not very predominant. So when I tap one, I can't even tell. It just, see, like that just changed colors. That's changing colors. Now I'm trying to change the intensity. Let's try that. We'll just turn it down just a little bit. That should be visible and it should keep the flare from popping up on me. All right, so what I'm saying is if I have a flap that's right here, it'll go around the top of this cap, and it should start right at the bottom of this cap. Now, that's going to take some measurement. I'm going to have to basically sew this a couple times and find out where I need to put this, but it'll help out to kind of get started. And in fact, one of the things I could do is I'm going to take a small piece of paper and get a small scrap. I've got several scraps laying around. In fact, this was the first time I made the body. And I'm going to draw an example of my triangle right over it. Now, I guess I have to do it the side next to it. So about knuckle in some change. So about here to, oops. Sorry. Okay, so about, let me look at that again. Fingertip, just past my knuckle. Fingertip, just past my knuckle. So right about here. So I can make it to about here. Let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 1, 2, 3. That might be right in there. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yep, right in the middle. And then, let's see about a knuckle. This is just guesstimation. I could easily take a ruler, but what happens is I start using a ruler and it gets in the way, and then I'm moving like 5 other things. And what this is going to do is I'm actually going to use this as a placeholder. Now, the part of the thing about using the scrap material that I'm using, did I center that at all? Oh, that's why I went to the wrong line. Yeah, I looked at that and I was like, that's not very well done. So what'll happen is I can take this and I can sew it on. And what I was saying is that by using the scrap material, I don't have to worry so much about doing and undoing, cutting, changing the pattern with just pure guesses. In this case, I'm going to literally hand stitch this in place, and then I can unstitch or just cut sections of this off, and I could then reverse this out and see where all the changes are that I've made, lay it down on top of my pattern or on the top of another piece of paper and change it. I don't have to like guess. When I use the scrap paper and I use a wider stitch, I can literally just take this apart and then make the adjustments here without having to worry about, oh, is this the right place? Did I measure it? And in this case, being able to sew on that triangle, I will literally be able to see where it needs to go. And then when I undo it, I could just add that triangle to the back of my pattern where it's supposed to go on the neck. And that should help out with that little bit of a change. And if I'm reading it correctly and I'm right, that little section being a little bit longer here, it'll look odd in the pattern because it'll literally just be an added triangle, but it should fill in this gap. I could just make some adjustments on how I sew it, and then that should keep me from having to add a separate piece. And in case you're curious, yes, if you decided you prefer to add that triangle, you can, but adding small pieces to when you're stitching sometimes just gets really aggravating. It's easier the less you have to sew. And in this case, it would literally just be an extra line right here and then the line across, as opposed to a full piece. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to cut this out. So the first thing we're going to do for today is we are going to add a triangle to the back of the neck just to see how it looks. And then the next thing is we're going to add a circle to the mouth, which let me go ahead and see. Did I cut something out? No, I did not. Okay. While I am working on this right now, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to place the face right down on top. I don't like this color. I think now I got to turn it down again. Yeah, there we go. That should be better. All right, so I'm literally just going to put it face down. I'm going to use this circle. Now, the more perfect of a circle I cut into the fabric and into the pattern, the more it'll take that place, because this is going to do its best to fill. If I were to put a rectangle in here, it would try its best to make a rectangle shape. So the good news is now that I've got roughly the size of the mouth that I want, yes, it looks big because it's almost as big as the face. I will be able to just kind of cut it from there. Now that I'm kind of saying that, though, there is a chance I need to bring this down too, because if you look here, I got a tiny bit of forehead. So it does come down a little bit. What we're going to do is we're also going to find out when we add that circle if I want to adjust that. So that's great. All these little things that I can find out, that's why we make the prototypes over and over and over again. And let's see. Again, this doesn't have to be a perfect version of it. It's just enough for me to see what I'm doing. And I've got a little bit of experience doing this, so I know what to kind of expect. And one of the things that I've learned is that if you are making a circle that goes inside anything, you want the inside piece to slightly overlap the outside. So imagine this is the exact circle you wanted. You're going to want to go about 1/4 of an inch bigger than what this is. And that's because when you sew it on, you get a little bit of loss from where you have to have the stitch. So I'm making this just a tiny bit bigger. Another thing that I have seen a lot of times online is that, especially for clothing patterns, if people make their patterns, they say, cut this with a blank allowance. And then they'll just tell you to cut bigger than what your pattern is. So in an example, they would have said, I'll show it, it's better here. They would have said, cut this triangle out, trace this triangle with your chalk, with your soapstone onto the pattern, but cut it this size. I hate that. I hate guessing. I hate trying to figure it out. So what I always do is I cut my patterns and I draw my patterns to the actual size I want to cut everything. I don't know if that's easier, but for me, it makes a big difference on what you have and don't have as far as finished products. So if all I have to do is cut my lines, I never have to worry, oh, did I forget? Do I need to cut this one? And maybe if I always cut with excess, I would just be used to it. But because I don't, I just want to make sure that I've got it set up appropriately. I think that this is a little bit more of an oval than I originally wanted. But again, we're going to sew it on, see what it looks like, learn from that, and adjust. Did the thing where it's the actual size, no, not the allowance? Yeah, I personally feel the same way. And because I feel that way, I do my best to do things that way. It's kind of, I don't want to be a hypocrite. And it looks like I've got this a little bit too big still. So I'm going to cut it down. You know, it's kind of funny. I don't really know. I've got a little bit of an allowance around the whole thing. No, that's too much. It looks like I can actually cut it to the size I estimated. And again, since this was literally just an estimation, all I did was put it down and then try and roughly trace it. It does make sense. It's not like I'm still going against what I said. It's just that my original estimation was too big. Okay. See, that puts it just a little bit bigger. Oops, sorry. I have to adjust pretty much every time I do something because all right, so that puts it just a little bit bigger than my estimated circle. I'm going to hand stitch this when I put it on. I might. I don't know what I'm going to do. I might have to take this out and right side it out. I might as well. I still got this opening in the back that I can use. And that's the one I'll hand stitch. I'll hand stitch this in place, and I will try and machine sew this in place. That should give me a good estimation on a few different things. And I still have my pencil. Okay, there we go. And here is what I'm referring to. I can literally trace my pattern, and I don't have to worry about, oh, is it bigger or smaller or anything like that. I still know that there's going to be some problems because this material doesn't really want to work with me and being perfectly even. It kind of stretches and flexes as I work, but that's totally okay. If one of the things about using this material is that since it is scrap, it does give me that kind of experience on knowing what to expect with something more solid by being less reliable as is. I know that sounds weird, but basically it's kind of like if you work with hard tools, let's say you don't have the right tool for the job, so you get used to using the wrong tool the hard way. By the time you get to the right tool, it's so much easier. And unfortunately, that's how I do a lot of my work as in general. I don't have the right stuff for it, so I make do as best I can and just truck right on through. Got to make sure I get all my pattern out of the way so I don't lose it, get caught up in other stuff. I've got the prototype quite a bit finished already. It would be wonderful if today we did enough that I was able to start the actual material. And then it would just kind of leave the tentacles and the legs. And I don't even have to make the tentacles on the prototype. That's something I'm pretty confident I could do with just the material, just going directly to the original stuff, the actual stuff. So I'm getting a lot of things out of my way here. Let's see, is this? Nope, that's not my good one. I just put it somewhere. Where'd it go? There it is. And now, I go ahead and unstuff this. I gotta get my bag ready so I can throw my stuffing into it. Okay, so this is just going to be unstuffing this piece that I put together. Fortunately, everything that's put on it has been machine sewed, so I don't have to worry about my fluff being sewn into anything. Whenever I hand stitch afterwards and put it together, I often wind up stitching some of the fuzz into it, and it just won't come out. Okay, get this out of my way. And let's stitch a mouth in place. Oh, I gotta right-side it out, of course. Or wrong-sided out? Yeah. I have an idea for how I'm going to do the ears. I thought about it last night. I couldn't quite sleep. I have some weird sleeping problems lately. So what I think I'm going to wind up doing, though, is I'm going to cut out this part of the ear as a separate piece, sew that on with a little excess, pull that so that when I sew across, I pin it down, which means I might sew through here. I'm not 100% sure, or I might just sew on the inside. So I've already got a basic idea on how I'm going to fix the ears. And I think that'll look really good. I just may have to extend the head out just a little bit lower along with that lip because, of course, that lip, as I mentioned earlier, I want it to fold in. I am not going to fold in the lip right now. The reason is because I'm absolutely sure that it's not enough space. But when I get there, when I do the next step, I'm going to add a bunch of material. Not a bunch, but maybe a 1/4 inch more material to get that shape. So now I like to use the inside, the flattest piece that I can. If I can see the whole circle, that makes it a lot easier because if you look here, I've got all these different shapes I'd have to maneuver around. But if I pin the circle, put the pins on the top where the circle is, I can actually just follow my line. That makes it a little bit easier to sew when I'm putting it together. You can do the other way around. It is not like most of this stuff has to be done a certain way. But for me, look at how much easier that's going to be than trying to get everything to stuff backwards and go over this knot, trying to get this to fold back as well. I'm still folding it, but I don't have to worry about where it's at as much. I have the free reign of seeing this and then knowing that it's held back by my pins. And depending on the shapes that you're doing, sometimes that'll make a big difference. I know that it's going to be hard no matter what with a tube. For example, if you did a leg, let's imagine like a bare leg where all it is a tube with a flat piece on the bottom. That might make a difference for you. It might not. But once you get it all pinned in place, you can really look at it and see what's going to be the easiest part to have up and or down. And one of the things I'm doing here is I'm pinning pretty far in. I'm doing my very best to make sure all this stuff stays far enough back that it's not going to get in my way when I try and run it through. And again, I feel like that's easier to do when I don't have to worry about what it looks like. Right there, all right, folded flat. Well, right here I have all these curves, all these bends. And they start showing up more and more depending on what I'm doing. There may be a technical reason for a lot of these things, and maybe I'm doing them wrong. But I'm self-taught. I am doing my best to show you what I've learned. And if somebody tells me something new, I will definitely try it. One of the things I did that helped me learn about the circle being bigger than the outside is I don't always like doing applique when I'm adding stuff like eyes or patterns to the back of animals. And I was doing more detailed shapes. I was doing stuff like alchemy symbols, and I did a house key for somebody one time. And I learned that if I make them both the same size, it doesn't work at all. It just pulls on it. But that's when I learned that I can make the inside piece a little bit wider, and it makes it so much easier to kind of sew the whole thing together. All right, let's see what we can see. I'm going to adjust my lighting over and over again tonight. I really got to get the replacement for my light in this. It would really help to have light here, but I keep forgetting, and then I keep getting afraid that I'm getting the wrong light bulb, and I'm going to start a fire, which would super suck. All right. I say all right a lot. I need to work on that. That is apparently my filler word. People say I am not an person. But apparently, all right is on my list. And I've been trying to avoid saying that a little bit more. I don't think that that's something most people pay attention to. I despise using filler words because it makes me feel like I don't know anything about what I'm talking about. And I remember being in a speech class during college. We had to take one of those. It was one of my options for those gen ed classes, and there was always somebody that would go up and And one time I counted in the middle of his entire speech. I was like, "Look, I don't mean to embarrass you, but here's your notes," because we all had to give notes for each other. And the dude said so many times, and I don't think he even understood why I counted it for him. So my filler word is all right, and I need to fix that. In fact, I almost just said it again. Here is a quick look at how I stitch my prototypes. Let me go ahead and get these pins all out of the way. Yes, I do leave pins in, especially when I'm doing something simple like this, because I've got a wider stitch. If you look right here, let me go ahead and make sure the light's going to adjust. I'm going to move this a little bit so you can see. One of the things that I will do when I'm doing my prototypes, you can definitely use different thread. I mean, it doesn't matter what it looks like, right? So you can see right here that I used the black thread on it, and you can still see that it's a wider stitch. It's hard to see because of focus and light and black on black. But here, you can very clearly see your stitches since I've got it in white, and you can see that I've got it really wide. The reason I do that is because in the end, sometimes what I have found is that when I do these cotton prototypes, I might have to take my seam ripper and cut to break it apart so I can try something else. In this case, what I will wind up doing is I'm going to sew on this triangle that I mentioned, and then I'm going to try and rip all this apart, keeping the triangle on the back along with the body so that I can then lay it out and trace it how I want it to look. I'll be able to tell exactly where on the back of the neck that triangle needs to go instead of trying to figure it out and fail. This won't work for absolutely everything, but it's something you could add to your repertoire of ideas so that it makes your prototype making just a teeny bit easier. all these little things kind of add up. And while they don't always work every single time, having a lot of options and ability to kind of think outside the box for different things is going to help out so much. And sometimes it helps to start thinking out of the box when you hear all these other ideas that kind of build up to it. So, okay, that won't work. This won't work. And you kind of get a little bit of a range from it. Now, basically, I'm just kind of putting the rest of this together. I'm pulling it all right side out again, so that I can stuff it up. And then I'm going to hand stitch this back on. I'll know exactly how it needs to go. Where did I put my fluff? You guys keep hiding my fluff on me. I don't appreciate it. I'm joking. It's obviously not your fault. So one of the things that I'm kind of working on is figuring out how I'm going to do... basically, I want to say thank you to people for joining me. And this, I believe, has already taken, 3 days of work, which if I were doing this myself, I basically would just work on this all day. If I'd play some video games, and between rounds, I would try and cut and stuff and shape and figure out the details. But I have made plushes that have just taken me like a week's worth of figuring out, because each time I try and do something, I have to change all kinds of different things. Well, in this case, I'm only been working on live. So the people that have been watching me, I just want to find a way to kind of show appreciation for that. I was kind of thinking about maybe making, when I finish this plush, doing a giveaway for it, but I'm also behind on giveaways as in general. So I need a little bit of help trying to figure things like that out. If you guys are interested in helping me figure that out, I will do something where it's anybody that's following me and that likes and comments. I'll do like a final post, or I will set up a separate TikTok post for it instead of just my lives. And you guys can kind of help me figure out some details. I would like to find a way to say thank you, and I don't know what that means. I know that I'm not some massive creator that is making thousands of dollars every time I post something, and people aren't following me and gifting and so on and so forth. But I want to say thank you for the people that do join me. I've got a couple people that I work with quite a bit. We got Cat B, Seal, Foxy's been coming in a lot, Shadow. There's a lot of people that come in and have been joining me and helping me. And I'm trying to do my best to, whenever something comes up, I give them something that I can. For example, I'm sending Cat B a thank you as a plush, and it's going to be an added plush to something that they purchased. And I just want to make sure that they know how much I appreciate them, and we kind of chat it out a little bit. And it's just little things, but I can't just say, hey, here, thank you for doing this, here's payment. Because I'm not in that situation. And it looks like I need to go get some more fuzz real quick. I think that's basically what's happening is the fuzz that I've got here, while it probably would have been enough, I did not break it up enough. So I need to kind of go get some more fluff to use. Actually, you know what? I'm going to keep taking this guy apart. This is the old prototype. And you can see quite a few changes from that to this. But I'm also not... It's not so full that you can really tell. This is going to be one of the last adjustments I should have to make for this. With a little bit of luck, I will have fixed the cap there, and I will figure out this back well enough. And you can already see this is flat, which if I didn't want there to be a lip, that would have been perfect. All I have to do is make sure that there is about maybe 1/3 of an inch, maybe 1/2 an inch extra in here, so that I can fold it backwards and have that lip all the way around, so that when the tentacles are in there, they look like they're actually coming out of a mouth instead of just being stuck to the face. That's the whole goal for that. And I'll show you what I'm talking about right here. See how there's that little line right around the edge of the mouth? I think it'll look a lot better if that actually protrudes a little bit. I don't know if I'll stuff it or not, but I think that that's going to help quite a bit. And that's my goal. If I left it like this, I guess what I could do is I could just sew a little, almost like a little bit of bias. I can't remember the word for it, but basically just a small folded piece right there. And that might do what I need as well. In fact, that might wind up being easier to do. So I will consider that while I am putting this on. It's definitely a doable idea because all I would have to do is cut a straight piece that goes that length, slightly overlaps so that I can sew them together and then put it in there. I just also have to make sure that it is a little bit more narrow on the outside so that it doesn't fold backwards. So it doesn't fold towards the face. Oops, sorry, so fold towards the face. It actually pouts inside. But that might be something I could actually do instead, and that wouldn't be too bad. Hey, Seal, I just mentioned you a minute ago. And let's see what we have got. So now it looks like the triangle's kind of gotten bigger. You can see what happened was You can see what happened was that stitch just came loose. This was all hand stitched originally anyways. This was kind of the process of trying to figure it out. So when I stitch it on, I'm going to start here, work around, and I'll hand stitch that closed so it brings it right back to where it's supposed to be. And, I swear that I actually sewed that in, but it's definitely a hand stitch. I can see right there, all that stitching is coming undone. And that's not a problem for a prototype because, like I said, this lets me take it apart again. It is a little bit annoying in this particular circumstance because I would love for it to have been where it needs to go. Adjusting lights. Oh no, everything's so bright. Okay. I have to make sure that I pay enough attention here. So if I leave my phone died, that's not cool. I think you need to go ahead and plug it in and listen while you're standing up against the wall. That uncomfortable position where everybody has their plugs. And man, it's so weird trying to figure out light sometimes. I've got a 3-bar system. It's 1 bar, 2 bar, 3 bar, but they don't swivel in both directions. So I have to swivel one of them away and then one of them towards me. Otherwise I get blinded. And then I also have a ring light over here. And I use that mostly for the sewing machine itself. But sometimes it just kind of becomes this awkward lighting process. And then after yesterday, I got completely dinged. It acted like it was too blurry or there wasn't enough activity. So I'm kind of a little bit worried that's going to happen again. Hey, where did that triangle go? I think that's it. Yep, there we go. Not to mention the fact that I've got a big mess everywhere because I'm always in this one spot. Okay, so the way that I want to go ahead and do this, let's go ahead and I'm going to start from the inside. This, again, does not have to be perfect. Not only does none of this have to be perfect, but this really doesn't. I need it mostly to tell where my triangle is going to be and what size I would like that triangle to be. So I'm going to go ahead and start right about here and just start sewing it on. I'm going to be using a back stitch when I can, but since I am still just doing piece to piece, it's just going to be another ladder stitch, but it's going to be a really wide ladder stitch. I don't need it to fit there, but you can see what's happening is I've got a folded over part. Sorry, this section is slightly overlapping. So it's going to be a fold right here all the way across. And I'm essentially sewing at that fold. And I'm doing the same thing about 1/4 of an inch in, probably a little less than 1/4 of an inch. Let's see if I can adjust this so you can see what I'm referring to while I'm sewing. My camera tends to try and pick up on my hands and then the thread and then back and forth. So it's not always very clear. If I were to be really worried about this, one of the things, oops, let me twist this. One of the things I can do is I can literally line up this side and do a figure 8 stitch. Let me show you that real quick since I've got black on white, which I almost never get the option to do. All right, so what I could do is since this is going to fold over anyways, I could lay this down and I could do a much stronger stitch, which is a back stitch. I have to kind of get it started here so I can show you roughly what I mean. All right, so what happens is I come up right here. Wow, this light is really, let me turn this light down a little bit. I'm really not sure what's going to make a difference and what's not, but I'm trying to show you so that you can learn as well. So what I have done is I've essentially lined up my triangle and the edge of my neck where I'm sewing it to. Where the stitch comes out, I will go backwards between the previous stitches, and I will try and keep it really short as I go forward. Again, I will go backwards between previous stitches, do my very best to keep it short as I can. My thread's not even, so it's kind of pulling awkwardly. There we go. And you can see what happens is I'm not doing it particularly clean, but if you do it really clean, you'll get these stitches all in a nice straight line. And that's a really solid stitch for if you are trying to connect pieces in this format, or if you are hand stitching. It might take a little bit of practice, a little bit of time to get it to look as well as you want it to look. But since it is also just a stitch on the inside, the good news is you don't have to worry about how it looks as long as it winds up being good and sturdy. There's probably a lot of other stitches that you can use. So don't just stick with what I'm saying. I would suggest do some research for yourself. I haven't had time and I don't do much hand stitching, so I don't know a whole lot of options. And if anybody tells me, hey, you're doing the wrong thing, I promise I will change. And you can roughly see what's happened here. Just a series of stitches straight down. Just enough for it to be good and strong and sturdy. Now you can see right here where it comes through, but if I were to pull it tighter each time, it would have worked out a lot nicer. That's roughly what it would have looked like. And you'll want to pull it tight between each stitch, by the way, instead, as opposed to what I was doing on the other side, which when I was doing this, when I was just doing the ladder stitch where I would go back and forth from each piece, you want to pull it tight every couple stitches. So it looks to me like my triangle is a little bit too long here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off a small section. Just a thin line. And then I'll take my triangle that I built, which is right here. I'm going to cut that same thing off, just so I know. Again, perfection is not what we're aiming for. We are aiming for rough approximations so that we can perfect it later. Now I'm going to take that corner, and because I don't really want to lay that other side flat anymore, I'm just going to go ahead and continue with the ladder stitch. But now you've seen an option, so that should be at least a little bit helpful. Give you an idea as to some other things that you can do when you're kind of sewing things together. Try and get this roughly in the corner. And you can see right here, I can tighten this up. See that thread right there? I pull it nice and tight and it lines up really easily. There's a lot of things you can do to secure that as well. You can back stitch once or twice. You can tie it off as a knot. Whichever you kind of feel like is more secure for you. For me, in this particular circumstance, I am just running with it. I am not concerned about where everything lands. I'm not concerned with it pulling awkwardly. I do need to know what the back of this cap looks like. I think it rounds. Yep, there it is. I knew that this was going to round out, but you can see where my stitching has started coming out. And that's, again, because I wasn't too concerned. But it looks like there's going to be a little bit of a problem here. I think that I should be able to work around it, but I also realize I probably need to round this as well. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that up. Here's my bottom. I'm just going to draw that I want this rounded just so I can remind myself. I didn't write the word round. I don't know if you saw that, but I just kind of wrote words, symbols, things. And then each time I pull it tight, you can see how it runs it back through the whole thing. It looks like because of this, it's going to be a little bit harder. But I think what I'm going to wind up doing is I'm pretty sure the length I've got is good, and that should be good on the opposite side as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my triangle right down the middle, since I've got the length on this side right, and it looks like this will be pretty close to centered. So I think that I don't think I need to adjust that too much. You know what? if I were to look at it this way, if I were to have these pinned in place still so that they were rounded like they're supposed to be, it doesn't look like that's going to be quite center. So I'm going to add just a tiny bit to the length of my triangle. Here, I'm going to go ahead and start drawing on the back. I've got a whole lot of drawing there. And then I'm going to add to the length here by maybe 1/4 of an inch. Now what that should mean is, if I'm right, where this stops on the plush should be fine. I'll cut this all loose and I'll know where that goes on my pattern. This length should be good. I will make this halfway a little bit longer than when I cut it in half, because I'm going to literally just cut it in half. Well, fold it in half. And then let's see, I'm going to write down one more thing. I'm going to write down neck, so that I know that this is almost exactly what I'm going to add to my neck. So that's going to change quite a bit of things on this little piece. I will be cutting off some stuff. I will be adding this section on somewhere. And if I am right, the head will sew down. We'll stop roughly where this starts. And then this will be where my rounded end goes. Oops, sorry. The bottom will be where the rounded end goes. So it'll sew across like this to its other piece. And I'll be able to kind of get a good shape out of that. So let's go ahead and put this out of the way. I'm going to cut this loose. I really got to clean up my little sideboard here. I got all kinds of material just sitting around. I got scissors and paper and patterns and pieces of patterns and thread and everything. Okay, so we have now tested this out. I think that instead of trying to do the lip like I was talking about originally, I have decided I'm going to cut just a small section and then sew it into this. I've done that with several different things. I just had to adjust the shape that I do a little bit. I can measure it, but I don't have a rounded measuring tape, so I'm going to try it now. I don't want to do that. I have a, what's the word I'm looking for? Seam tape, seamster tape, sewing tape. I'm not even sure what that's actually called. I'm going to go get that real quick so I can measure. I'll be right back. Okay, this is what I'm referring to. It is just soft measuring tape. I know there's a word for it, but I just can't put it into words. Apparently I put this together backwards. My son was playing with this, pretending it was a snake. So I wound up just kind of picking it up one day and running off with it and hiding it. Now I've got to wind it all back up. You know what? Screw that. Instead of winding it up, we are going to save time. You guys are not interested in watching me wind something. I cannot imagine that being fun. But what I can do is I can run this literally right along with it. That should give, and what I'll do is when I cut it, I will cut it just a little bit big. If you are wondering why can't I just do this on the same side as my circle, you know, the part that I cut out, the pattern, it's because there's that loss of material from when I sew the two ends together. And that's going to be enough to keep me from being able to get like a solid measurement on it. The good thing is that if I cut it too big, that's okay. I can overlap. I can cut further. I just have to make sure that I don't cut it too small, because that would be pretty annoying. And let's see what we've got here. This is just an approximation because as I'm kind of moving, I can feel it. So we'll do about 8.5 inches. Again, that should be too much, but I can always add to my notes later and make some changes accordingly. So 8.5 inches, just enough to be able to say that's what I want. Is that not the word? Let's see. I don't know, honestly. Did something happen with Seal? Seal lover, just making sure. Okay, so... Okay, your phone died. Okay, just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss something important. I do my best to pay enough attention. Doesn't always work. So we've got this. I am now going to show you my process for disassembling my prototype with deliberate and special care. There we go. Let's see, I think everything else is good to go. This is the very special care that I take when I am disassembling my prototype. All I have to do is make sure I don't cut what I need to use. So what's happening is I am just going to be taking this whole thing apart. Since I used this pattern to build it, I now know that whatever changes I've made to make this fit are what I need the pattern to look like. So I can essentially just take it all apart. This is what I was talking about with hand stitching, getting some of that fuzz stuck inside. All right, there we go. Just need to undo all of this. Making sure I keep that piece intact. Everything else should be okay. I just have to then take, worst case scenario, which I'm going to try and do, I made my stitches wider so that I could do this. I just don't know for sure that it worked out. This is me attempting to seam rip so that I can really lay it out flat and see where everything's supposed to go. All I have to do is get enough of it apart. Now, if this had been done with the white stitches, it definitely would have been easier. But one of the good things that's going to happen here, and I guess I do need to turn this light up a little bit. Wrong. There we go. One of the good things is that the way that I did this with the wider stitch, if I can get a hold of it just right, I can just pull out whole stitches at a time. I did my best to not backstitch on anything, but out of habit, I know I do it all the time. But you can see right there, I just pulled out like 1/4 of an inch of stitches because of the way that I had it spaced. Obviously, if you are doing your final projects, you want to make sure your stitches hold in place. In this case, I just wanted my stitches to hold long enough for me to be able to do any kind of adjustments that I needed. So I'm just kind of running through and pulling and pulling. This is just separating the back cap from the body. And if it tears the thread, great, that's fine. I can always just pull from that point, pull it all the way out. And I'll show you what I'm referring to. So I'm going to cut that. Nope. Yep, there we go. I cut it. Now I'm just taking this thread and pulling it right out, completely unstitched. This is just a helpful little bit of something to do for whenever you are working on your prototypes. And it also shows an example of what not to do whenever you're doing your final projects. Make sure your stitches are tight for a final project and always backstitch for final projects. If you do not, this is how easy your thread will come out. It may last for quite some time, but one day it'll start to fray and it's just going to completely come apart on you. So a little bit of good information to have that will probably make a big difference at some point in time. I would like to point out, if you are working on your final project, you do not need to have a stitch of one. That's such a fine stitch that I cannot even guarantee that it's going to be strong in your fabric. It might actually damage your fabric because of how close it is. But even if it doesn't damage it, imagine if you make a mistake and have to undo something. If you cannot get to your stitches, you might just have to start completely over. Now, for me, I have found that about a 2.5 for the length of my stitches is a great length. Things don't come apart easily. I could not just pull things out like what I'm doing right now. And I don't ever have to worry about it coming apart. I've actually put entire plushes into my washing machine and they have not come undone. So finding that balance between what you need and what you're doing is going to be one of those key things that might just be an experience thing. But from my experience, keeping it at about a 2 should be a pretty good, solid way to go about things. Again, this is a case of me just trying to undo this so I can lay it flat. Just got notification. Oh, that's funny. Like, it takes forever. I wonder what that's about. Maybe it's because I'm not scheduling this. Maybe if I start scheduling my lives and then meeting the schedule, I'm always worried about doing that because I'm like, okay, I'm going to get on at about 6. And then suddenly it's like 6:15 and I'm still trying to get ready, trying to get my son ready. I've got to make sure he's taken care of. Sometimes he gets hungry at the last minute. And 6 o'clock is a fair time for a child to eat. So it's not like I can tell him, hey, wait for dinner. That is dinner time. Now, I know that watching me tear this apart is probably low on the list. But if it's helpful to know, I'm not enjoying this either. This is just something I know that is going to make my job easier. And I'm glad that I prepped for it because otherwise what would happen is I would just give up. If I had accidentally sewed this at a 2 like I normally sew things, I would just be telling you that I am going to do my best to guesstimate. I'd make some adjustments to the pattern that probably wouldn't work. And it would be this whole other process. I'm just happy that I'm not making the same mistakes I was making when I was first learning. And if I'm really lucky, it'll help you guys figure out something for whenever you try to make your own as well. All these little details kind of add up. You'd be surprised. I was trying to make a snake blanket, and what I'm doing is I am sewing a snake onto the blanket, which means a whole lot of extra steps beyond what I've kind of described. I spent 2 hours doing a very simple design because I messed up doing exactly what I was talking about here. I had the wrong measurements. I had the wrong stitch. And I wound up having to go through, and I broke so much of it. And it took so much time that I was just aggravated. I had to go sit outside and just do nothing for a minute because I was so mad. And that was on top of everything else for that day. I think that was the first day that the water main broke in town. Oops. I got to solve a puzzle real quick. Sorry. Oops. There we go. So that day had just piled on all over the place. And then it turns out that my black thread was kind of breaking on me. I don't know if you guys have ever sewn anything, spent a day sewing on anything, or, honestly, any kind of project. If you're working with paints, if you're working with wood, and everything just comes apart on you. Nothing seems to do what it's supposed to do. That's the kind of days where you just want to stop doing it for the day and just go take a break. Well, I'm doing my very best to keep up with commissions. So I didn't have that option. I was like, well, I've got to figure it out and I got to keep on trucking. And I did. Got there eventually. My butt itches. Well, at first it was right on time. Now it's delayed. Not quite the same, but my 2-year-old once took a black Sharpie on an almost... No, that's not funny. Oh, no, I'm so sorry. It depends on what kind of painting was it? Was it an oil painting or was it an acrylic? If it's acrylic, at least you can just start painting over it. If it's oil, you got to go through a few extra steps because you can't have that stuff on top of your oil while it's trying to cure and dry. Oh my goodness. Project Misfire. I can't even imagine how aggravated I'd be for that. I haven't painted in a couple years. And when I did, my son wasn't anywhere in the room. I didn't paint in the room. So I didn't have to worry about that kind of thing. But I paid attention. I moved everything out of the way so it was nowhere near what he played with every night. Okay, I've got a small section here that's acting weird, and I don't know why. Come on, just let me get to it. I can't tell if I'm actually cutting into my cotton or not. This is one of those things that just seems so weird. Acrylic. So yeah, it wasn't the end of the world. I left it out at my desk and forgot I was out. We went into the room to grab something quick. Oof, oof, oof. And I'll bet in the back of your mind, you're like, you want to yell to stop them, but you like try and catch yourself. It's like, that's not really your fault, but you're the one doing it. Oh man, that's got to be some hard. But yeah, I'm glad it was acrylic because like I said, that oil would have been so many extra steps to try and get that taken care of. Sorry about this taking so long, guys. I promise this is taking less time than if I had done things differently, but I also know exactly what we're looking at here. What I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to show you what we're working on, show you the kind of progress we've made so far. This is what we are making today. We are trying to finish up the body for our mushroom slug. We're going to have the top to be cap, and then we're going to have the back of his body to be a cap. And the idea is that I can put different types of mushrooms on here. And what I'm doing right now is I'm actually cutting apart our prototype, which came really close to finishing everything off, so that I can then trace what I've changed of the body onto a piece of paper so I can update our pattern. It's a lot easier than it is to guesstimate where things go, especially since in this case I actually hand sewed something on so that we could tell where to attach it. But yes, this is a bit of a long process. I am pretty close to done. I didn't realize how close to done it was. But with luck, when I make this prototype, which, by the way, I could easily not make a prototype. I could just kind of run with it. But I would much rather at least one more try. But with this prototype being finished, I should be pretty darn close to having everything fixed, which means that we are getting really close to having a finished mushroom slug. I got a few more stitches on the body, and then I got to get the mouth. I got all this thread in the way, so it's kind of getting a little bit confusing. Come on, you can do it. Just a few more pieces. Just get them out of the way. And you can see that because of the way that I put this together, the prototype together, I can actually get the seams out pretty easy. So that's also a great thing. If you're sewing at home, keep that in mind. This is an example of what not to do for a finished project, but for making prototypes, it is definitely the best move to make. And again, part of the reason I have to do this is because when I was building it, I found little things that, oh, this is just needs to be changed a little bit. I can actually cut it right now so that it fits what I want. Well, with those little cuts being made, I can now just use the actual material. Get out of here. I can use the actual material to figure out my pattern. And yes, again, anybody that's been here for a couple minutes, I am repeating myself. I know. It's somewhere between vamping to fill space and making sure that anybody that comes in knows what I'm referring to. But it also has to do with the idea of if you're trying to learn and you're listening to somebody as they're working, if I tell you what's going on, it might help with the memory. For me, I will forget little things, but if I've heard it 10 times, there's a better chance that I would remember. So I would love to save people time if they're making their own projects at home by repeating something just a little bit more often than I normally would. Is this even the right side? Yes. Okay. I just suddenly realized I may have been seam ripping the wrong half, but I had already cut the other side completely off. So I guess that was kind of my head playing a trick on me kind of situation. So we are almost done. I think I'm at the ear now. So yep, that's a small section that I don't even have to worry about. I left that open on purpose when I was doing the ear because I think I know what I'm going to do for the ear. But I have to finish up the rest of this anyways. And the good news is for what I'm going to do with the ear, I don't even have to do it for the prototype. I can just leave that open. And then when I do the final version here in a little while, maybe in a little while, that when I do the final version, I can literally just attach it and make some adjustments on the fly. And even if it doesn't turn out to be a perfect version of what I'm making, it will probably be everything I need it to be to learn from. Looks like I may have done some smaller stitches right here or accidentally pulled it tighter when I was undoing some of these seams. I just got to find it on the inside to cut it. And that should be enough to get it rolling again. There we go. Some of this has actually seems to have a wider seam. Like I accidentally pulled it a little bit too tight when I was running it through the sewing machine. Oh, I'm actually to where I previously hand stitched. Now I just got to get the last couple pieces loose. And I don't want to like tear it just because I really do want to use this as the form for the next piece. There we go. And I got all this. Oops, that's not quite all pulled apart. It's probably just like a thread or two that's still attached. But then like that'll be all I need. Well, I can actually see some underneath, so that's an easy enough cut. There we go. And this is just from having to re-sew a few spots. Little things will happen as I'm putting it together. So there's that. And you can see that, get you out of here. Oh, I see what happened with this. I'm just going to cut this one loose. This was the back part. Remember, if you were here earlier, I sewed just a little bit into the back cap. So now you can see with that triangle attached, I can tell exactly where I need it to go. Hopefully I left myself just enough notes on my little triangle so that I can fix the changes that I made, because I had mentioned I wanted it to be a little bit shorter, rounded. But I know that I will forget little details like that. That's why I add those excessive notes, even on just the prototype. Because if I don't know what to change, I will accidentally leave it out, and then I'll have to go fix it again later. And that in itself becomes really annoying. If I have to do something again because I made a mistake, I get aggravated. If I have to do it again because that's the process, I'm okay with it. I think I had to double back stitch this a little bit. This is right at the end of my wedge, and the wedge is on the butt. There we go. Okay, so let's see. I've got a few things that I changed, a few things that are the same. This should be enough for me to tell where that triangle goes. I'm going to go ahead and cut just a little bit of this excess off. It'll make it a little bit easier just to see. I'm going to do half of this triangle, because what I want to do is basically imagine sewing right down the back. Right down the back, and then this part of the triangle, and that'll be the same on each side. So it's going to be a mirrored piece on both sides. Do some adjusting again. I got all kinds of crap I can get out of the way now. I can use some of this to make like cloaks or hats for some of my mice. I do my best to be as frugal as I can be for each thing that I make. All right, so let's see. I've got to get my grid paper. It's just on the other side of the table, so at least I don't have to go far for that. I'm going to have to readjust my camera so you can see what I'm doing here. Don't lose any pieces. I tend to lose small pieces like this when I'm kind of moving everything around, which if I had a cleaner workspace, which since I'm doing, this is one side of my workspace. There are pieces of this pattern that I'm working on. Here's the face that I just made. And then there's another pattern that I haven't finished for a hound door. I've got a small version here. I've got an unfinished mouse. I've got thread and awes and material, my sketchbook, some finished plushes right here, my pencil sharpener, everything is on the other side. So I am all kinds of a mess. Does that ruin the fabric? Let me look and see what was that. It was I'm crazy. I hold my fabric the opposite direction and seam rip between the. Oh! I try and do that too. When I did the. Let's see. 1 second. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So, what they're talking about is when you are. Let me see if I can get this to show. So I've got it like this. This is the outside. I'm adjusting here. This way you can see what I'm referring to. There's a problem with doing what Project Misfire was just mentioning. And it works. I wish that I could do it that way every time, but I'm not good enough. So here's the seam. It's on both sides. What they're talking about is you spread the section here. You put the hook in between. So you've got one part underneath the thread and one part on top of the thread. You can see the little red dot. And then you just kind of run it along. The problem is, see right there. See how that point went right through my fabric? When I do this, so often that happens and then I tear my fabric. When I was doing that seam ripping I was talking about yesterday with the snake, I did that and I didn't realize, and I cut an entire section. But you can see right here, as long as I'm paying attention, you can even possibly hear it. That is literally cutting that seam as I go. It's definitely something you can do. And honestly, if you can get it to work that way, do it. Because then all you wind up doing is running this straight across, rip, 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 easy peasy. I can just never get it to work right. So I'm jealous of you, Misfire, for being able to get it to work right. And I don't appreciate you coming in here showing off like that. This is my stream. You don't have to be making me look bad. I hope that you understand and that the tone came across as lighthearted and funny. Yeah, I know. There's a lot of little things like that that happen. Fall stroll. Is it fall stroll? Yeah, fall stroll. Okay, just wanted to make sure I read that right. So now I am going to trace the original pattern. As soon as I find my pencil, there it is. This is going to take a little bit of adjusting so we can all see what I'm working on here. Not only do I want you guys to see what I'm doing, but I have to be able to see what I'm doing too. So I kind of have to adjust everything weirdly. Nope, that's not good enough. We'll leave it right there. Adjust some of my light, turn that away. Okay, now, first things first, I'm going to trace my original pattern. This has already got a few things that I have changed. Like, for example, I know I'm going to be cutting that out. One of the changes that I made was at the back side here, which, dang it, you can't see from this angle. Let's try again. That might work a little bit better. And there we go. Okay, so I had more of a rounded back here at first. But because we changed the way we're doing the back, I cut this off previously. So I already knew that. Oops. I want to get this as close to the same as what I've got as I can. It's easier to remove stuff that you now know isn't needed when you already have it traced properly. So here's my line. I don't know if you can see that. You can see roughly what it is. Now, I'm going to place this right back over it. Yes, what happens when I cut this and trace this, this fabric stretches and moves a little bit on me, so it may not be perfect, but it's going to be close enough. You can see a lot of this lines up pretty well. So now I know that I need to have my triangle attached right about here. And I can go ahead and cut this. Yep, see that section that I was talking about mentioning that I cut off. So instead of having this point here, having this point here, I'm going to go ahead and cut right there. I know the triangle needs to be added right about there. So I'm going to find my triangle, which is right here. See, this was my sides. See, that's perfect. I wanted to round this out. Let me get my scissors. And I wanted this to be rounded here on the bottom because that's where the back cap is going to go. Sorry, I keep forgetting what hand I need to use. So, a little bit rounded right. I am not fully ambidextrous, but I can do some things. Right here. And then, let's see, if I make this triangle about this long. This may be too long, but at the very least, it gives me a good starting point for it. I'm going to round this out just a little bit better. And the truth is, I can round that out after I cut it too, so I don't have to worry about that being perfect. That's probably going to be the section that I use to hand stitch it closed. Since it's a built-in opening, I don't have to leave a section like from here to here open. Instead, I can sew everything up and then hand stitch this onto that back cap in the end. So this will fold back to the back of the neck, and then I will have the head here. Now, one thing I didn't remember is that I want to make the head just a little bit longer because I want to bring the forehead down some. So let's go ahead and just add just a little bit here and then move this down just a little bit as well. I don't know if you can tell or not, but this is kind of rough and choppy. I am not really left-handed, but I am definitely stubborn. And this shouldn't affect the size of my circle too much. I'm trying to decide maybe what I should do instead. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and adjust my pattern this way. So that's where my mouth originally ended. I want it to be down just a little bit more. So I'm going to bring this whole thing down. So that should move my opening down a little bit as well. Oops. So here's where my neck ends. There's where my head ends. So, all right. So here's where it originally ended. Here and here. So now I'm just going to tilt it forward a little bit. Move this down so that it relines. That'll bring that edge out. Keep the circle the same size. And that should bring the forehead down just a little bit more. It'll bring the whole head forward a little bit, the ears a little bit, because I'm not going to change that shape. And then that should fix what I'm hoping. I didn't want to add a whole lot, but you can see right about here, that's how much forehead I've added. Yes, I will lose a little bit at the edge, but that should be okay. And I think that that's going to be what I need it to do. So I'm going to leave this here. Take my old one. I'm going to mark this with a 3 so I don't confuse myself later in case I get them in the same pile. I have rounded this out a little bit already, but let's go ahead and change that shape just a little bit. Try and make it a little bit smoother. The easier the transitions are on this, the more likely it is to take the rounded shape that I want. And I had to avoid making any changes to the areas that felt like they were perfect anyways. So I'm going to retrace the back of the butt here. Whoopsie. Got all kinds of things on my stuff kind of moving around on me. I'm going to retrace this to make sure it's as close as I can get it. Again, I know my prototype is not going to wind up being quite as perfect, but this way I can at least see what's going to wind up happening with it. This section, I'm kind of curious as to what's going to happen. My estimations were a little bit odd, so I may wind up having to curve this. But I'll be able to tell. I can sew across and then I can even stop here and then hand stitch it to find out. And then if I'm really lucky, what'll wind up happening is I know this doesn't look like that shape, but this should wind up being a rounded section for the cap, which again, I also adjusted. I think it's over here somewhere. Where did I put that? Oh no, where did I put that? I had been putting all my extra pieces on one side and then I easily knocked them away. I don't know. I really don't know where I put that. Did I put it away? Yes, I put it away. Thank goodness. Let me put everything else away. Man. All right, so this is going to be the back side. I made it a little bit shorter, so I'm hoping that that fixes it. It might still be a little bit wide on this part, but I want it to come up, and I know I'm going to lose about 1/4 of an inch, so there's a lot of little things that could have changed there. So now I have to get the 3 parts that I'm making. Well, I guess I can make it all. So this is the entire body right here. We've got the crest of the head. There's the front. This is the back. This is going to go on the belly, the face, the back cap, the body. A whole bunch of extra things, all to be cut out. Trying to get all my mess out of the way as well to make this a little bit easier on myself. I really got to start doing better at cleaning up after myself. And what I'm going to do now is basically just cut up and put together a brand new body. There's a lot of little changes, and sometimes if you're working on one of these at home and you make a bunch of little changes, You can probably make that on your final material. But because there's a lot of things on this that I just don't know what's going to happen, I'm doing one more prototype. And I would love that in the end, when I finish this, it looks perfect, because then I can actually make that without any kind of additional thought or extra process that I don't want you guys to miss out on without it being on live. I figure anything that I could do to make it smoother while we are actually working would be definitely helpful. And then by that point in time, all I would have to do is work on some detail work. We can figure out the legs. I've already started thinking that I'm going to readjust the legs. The way that I've got them drawn out is something that will be added on as opposed to something that's sewn on to the main body. And I'll show you what I mean. These are quite literally, I make these separate, make it like a big thick thigh, tiny little foot, and then hand stitch it on. But I realized that if I am making something that I want to repeat and do several of, what I may want to have to do is change the body type so that it goes over the leg, and that all that happens is the bottom part of the leg and a few other little details like that. So I'm kind of open to the possibility of doing it that way. I like the way it looks if it's just attached, but we'll see what winds up happening in the end after I finish the first completed version of it. And because I'm not dead set on either process, it should give me at least a little bit of freedom in my mind to not try and be stubborn about one way or the other. And I tell you right now, there are times that I will get like that. I've got a drawing, I know what I want it to look like, and I will do everything I can to make that happen. Catby was here before when I was trying to figure out how to do the top of the head separate as a separate piece instead of having the ears or the everything else on their own pieces. I wanted to do the entire top of the head out of one piece, because in my head, I pictured this being all mushroom. So like the red mushroom with the yellow dots on it. And I didn't want there to be extra seams. So sometimes I'll get stubborn. I know it. I'm okay with it. And you get to choose how you do your own process of things. So keep that in mind. You don't have to be stubborn. If it makes you feel better, I definitely prefer to be stubborn. So run things the way you feel most comfortable with. Hey, Foxy. I had mentioned you earlier, too. You and Seal and Shadow. And Spaz hasn't been in a little while. I haven't seen Spaz. Spaz has been commenting on some stuff and leaving some likes. So I know they're still out there. I know they're still okay. And I'm going to try and do my best to utilize the space on my scrap material as best I can. Keep in mind that whenever you're doing your final projects, you want to be aware of the direction of the thread and what direction it stretches. Because my understanding is if the thread is this way, it's going to stretch in accordance to the opposite. And the corners, I'm not exactly sure the right word, but it stretches at an angle comparison. That's just not going to work. Trying to use this space as best I can. I don't need a point on this. I just need to make sure that I have enough so that it doesn't tear anything. Okay. Now, one of the things that Catby has given me a hard time about is that I will use a pen, and I used a pen forever because I never did any prototype building. But I use a pen when I'm actually cutting on my Minky, because what happens is my soapstone, my colored pencil, none of those things were showing up on Minky. It's too fuzzy, so it wasn't holding any color. So Catby was giving me a hard time originally when I started using this colored pencil immediately. It was kind of funny because they pointed it out like right away. But if it matters to you, if you have the option, I always suggest to use a colored pencil, because then you don't have to worry about your ink getting everywhere. You don't have to worry about it spreading. I am very confident in using it on my Minky because I have washed my Minky projects in a wash machine and not had any kind of bleed through. And in case you are wondering, this mark that I put on here, which you may only barely be able to see, is right at my corner. And that's so that I know where to sew from when I'm doing this part. I don't actually accidentally sew around. It's just easier to line things up when you have extra marks. And in the future, I'll cut a little triangle wedge there so that I can just mark that as I go without having to worry. And I've got my mushroom slug bag. I'm just going to start putting stuff in here as I go so I don't wind up losing it again. My fabric is trying to fall off because it's so much excess that's coming down here. Perfect. That's fantastic. Now I do want to make sure it lays flat. I know that it's going to try and pull in different ways, but if I can get it at least roughly flat, I don't have to worry too much. I've mentioned several times about how this doesn't have to be perfect, but you do want to get it as close as you can. The prototypes, you have a lot of leeway, and you'll see where a lot of things do or don't work as you're kind of working on it. So you'll know what to be aware of. But there are a lot of things that will happen with this kind of material. And you can get a stronger material for your prototype stuff. I'm just using a spare sheet. This is a bedspread or a cover, maybe an actual sheet. I use pillowcases. Pretty much anything that I have that I don't have to spend the money on. And of course, I won't use one that's still good. This was one that was tore up, so the corners are already coming apart. I'm not saying to tear things apart to save money if you're going to lose money on it. Definitely not what I'm saying there. Looks like I have enough space here where I might be able to put my circle in if I plan for it. Excellent, that'll work. Because otherwise I'm just going to have a big section that I couldn't use. Now, if you are looking at this and you're kind of curious as to what that wedge is right here, that is to add shape to my plush. If you are using a flat piece, like what most of this is, it's going to do its very best to stay flat. And I know that seems both obvious and weird. Obvious because, flat things want to stay how they are, and weird because it's fabric, and fabric is very fluid, very moving and giving, flexing. Oopsie. But what'll happen is you'll find that if you have a flat piece that you are trying to bulk out to make into like a rounded ball shape, that it's just going to bulb. It's going to have little folds and ripples and flexes and stretches, and it's just not going to look smooth. So you can add little sections like this that give extra shape to the whole thing. This, I want it to be flat, so that's obviously perfect for me. One of the things I did when I first started learning how to make plushes is I found online a pattern for a sphere, a ball, and I printed that out and just ran with it. Once I printed it out, I realized that I could just draw things from sight to get an idea. And I do that a lot of times still, is if I see something, I'm like, all right, I want to try that. I will draw it based on what it looks like, trace it, and then just make some adjustments for myself. But don't forget, there are a lot of patterns online. A lot of them are for free. If you decide you wanted to start with something I make, I've got mice that I make that I've learned to turn into this little guy. But as far as a mouse or a bunny goes, just a little mouse. And I've got patterns online. I will be doing more patterns very soon. But you can also find free patterns. You can find beginner patterns. You can find all kinds of different stuff online. So if you wind up finding yourself interested and you don't want to learn how to make your own, but you want to start with making other people's stuff, it's definitely a great place to get started. You can also bring like flash drives into office printing stores, and you can just kind of save the patterns you find and bring it in there. And depending on circumstances, I definitely don't advocate for stealing from other artists, but I'm totally okay with big companies not getting every dollar that I make. So you might be able to find knockoff versions of some of your favorite plushes. And even if the instructions aren't perfect, it probably gets you pretty darn close to what you're aiming for. And that could be fun in itself too. So it's definitely worth keeping in mind. This is an example of what I was talking about, leaving a wedge. Oops, let's see if I can get this on. Nope. Right here. I think you can see what I'm talking about. Yes, there's a little triangle wedge cutout. That's what I use as markers. In this case, this is how far when I sew down the head, I'm going to stop sewing right there. So, and that's where the back of the neck is. And the triangle that I just added to the back of my body, that's where that's going to sew in at. So keeping little wedges like that will be helpful, especially once you get your pattern more and more flushed out. You'll know exactly where you need those kinds of things. Now, I had talked about leaving a wedge in the back of my butt here to give shape. This is another method of giving shape. You can make a rounded piece, a lot more rounded. I actually run this across the belly so that this belly and this belly do not have a solid piece together. They have a little bit of wiggle room between them. And that is another method for changing the shape of it. Just add more pieces. Sometimes straight will work. Sometimes flex will work. Like I could probably make this a little bit more of a rounded oval shape, but I would probably have to start adding wedges and all this other different stuff. And I might wind up doing that in the future. But for right now, this is a great way for me to decide how it goes. And that's also how I built my prototype. So I'm just going to keep going with that until I've decided I need to change it. And it is a real simple piece. If I had been going through the extra steps, if I were doing this at home without anybody watching, what I would have done was when I took apart my previous prototype, instead of just cutting it out like I did, I would have seam ripped a whole bunch of it. I would have reused this piece from that. I would have reused the head from it. I might have even, the head cap from it. I might have even tried to reuse the mouth. So there's a lot of little things that you can do a little bit different to make it easier on yourself. But as I'm sure a lot of you already know, doing stuff to show somebody does have extra steps. And unfortunately, it's just the way it is. I would rather teach you guys how to do something rather than do the easy way for myself. Let's see. You're so excited. Let's see where we've got here. Oh, you're excited for the way it's turning out? I'm hoping this turns out really well. We are to a point where we are close to done with this body. I know that this part is not the thrilling part, but if I am not mistaken about how easy this is to sew together, we might be able to get this prototype put together pretty quickly once I get this cut. Trying to make sure I'm at least working on camera. So while I'm doing this, I'm going to take a couple minutes to kind of run through my spiel. What I do is a lot of different types of stuff. I call myself the versatile deviant because I love artwork. I am currently working on some digital artwork so I can turn that into a binder for some Pokemon cards. And basically my son has gotten into Pokemon, and while I enjoy it, I don't know as much as I used to because it's been years since I've paid attention to it, but we open packs together. So I'm working on doing some art for that. And my hope is that if it's good enough that people will like it and maybe order some pieces, I can use that as additional little bits of income. I love to make different kinds of plushes. This Weird Wednesday came out of the desire to do something less than normal. For example, making my own plush. This little guy. So I'm making this little slug. On live, they came up with the idea of calling it a mushroom slug. I did not have that much direction to it. I could see the way that this worked. It was so pretty fast on the first version. Yeah, it was pretty fast. So I could see this in my mind. I had a dream with this little dude. And I have a whole backstory for him and whole little pieces of things for him. But like, I also want to do plushes like this. Like this is what it looks like on one side. That's the mouth. But you pull the whole thing out through the mouth and then you've got this guy. And you could even leave the tentacles coming out of the mouth so that it becomes a different type of look to it. So on Wednesdays, I started working on these different monstrous pieces. I did a headless horse mouse, headless horseman from Sleepy Hollow, where you could take off the head, but it's got a magnet, so it holds in place, and you could replace it with a jack-o'-lantern. I did the jumping mouse from Coraline. To this one, I wanted to do something new, so that's why I'm making this guy, but I've also made a Cthulhu, a cute Cthulhu, as the plan was. So the reason I'm bringing all this up is if you guys are interested in something, let me know. Maybe we can work on something. We can come up with something that doesn't have a plush version of it. One of the examples I keep coming to is if anybody's a horror movie fan and you've watched Evil Dead Rise, what the mother and the kids turned into, I might one day make a plush version of that. I think it would be somewhere between hilarious and cute and unique. And that's just the kind of thing that I think would be a lot of fun to put together. So if you are interested, just give me a follow, send me some messages. We can talk it out. I will work on some different plans. I'll make different cryptids and monsters and my own designs because I've got a lot of different things. In my opinion, my whole plan between learning how to make plushes involved a lot of just doing new stuff. And I might even start doing something with some leather on it. Like maybe I'll make a roly-poly sometime soon and I can do some tooled leather for the shell. And that could be a lot of fun because not only would I wouldn't just do a flat shell with like a pretty color, but I can tool some designs into it. So it becomes almost like the roly-poly itself is some kind of puzzle box that you have to open is what it looks like. Or maybe it's got like summoning sigils and I'll pair it with another animal or creature or demon. So we have a lot of different things that we could do there. I'm no end to ideas. So if nobody has any suggestions, any things that they want to watch that they would enjoy learning how to do together, I am 100% able to come up with something. But I love the idea of working with ideas too, with other people's thoughts too. For example, I have this intention to do like a Friday project where what I'm going to wind up doing is the requests of people for different types of mice. I have got a couple posts up that say, what kind of mouse would you like? And I've got so many responses, so many great ideas. And maybe I'll do like anime characters or different themes. For example, the theme on these guys was Death Cab for Cutie. And I went with the red tie around there we go. Death Cab for Cutie. And I've got the orange material, but I've got the red lace running through it all over. And then this one I gave the red flower. And I'm going to do some matching stickers for it. And I know that this isn't exactly like for everyone. This is kind of niche-y, but I'm hoping this is something that they wind up liking. Again, I made this. This is clearly themed after a very popular game and very popular series of characters. And I did this on Monday when I do my Poke Mondays. So on Fridays, what I'm thinking I might wind up adding is a fan day where I just pick kind of a suggestion from my comments and try and put that together. And depending on the circumstances, I don't always have the time to prep for stuff. Because, 4-year-old and then trying to do all this other stuff for sales, commissions, trying to get ready for different shows. I got a lot of different things I love to do. And then I have all the different things that I try and do for my own sanity. Just every now and then I'll pick up a new project that I want to work on. Like, for example, I want to start casting some aluminum. I want to give myself a silver nail. So I've done silver jewelry before, and I'm going to turn my thumb into a silver thumbnail. I think that'd be a lot of fun. It's something I've wanted to do. And then I recently started seeing that online. I think I mentioned it a couple times. And my phone, being the spy that it is, was like, hey, people do this. It's not all that unique. But you can still do it if you want. And I do want to. I can't help it. So anybody that's interested, feel free to follow, send messages, send comments. I do my best to pay attention. I've got some free things that I'm going to be putting up sometime very soon. I'm kind of watching everything as far as money and time goes, but I am doing my best to get caught up. I'm working extra hard right now. I'm finally getting into a little bit of a groove. And every time I get into a groove, something happens. Like, for example, now I've got to go through these extra steps of boiling water at home because our city water main busted. But, I'm taking it all in stride. I'm working hard. I am staying committed because I love to create. I want to find a way to make this my full-time. And yes, it is my full-time right now, but I'm trying to make it more of a reasonable full-time thing. Right now, I literally make everything that I do. Well, I'm trying to set myself up with prints so I can maybe do things on different sites. I am working on digital art as well, so I can copy that a little bit more. So there's a lot of things that I might do that you might be interested in as well. So you just send me a message and, hey, can you do this version of a blank? And I will put it on my list. And at some point in time, maybe you'll get to see that as well. And I like to do them live when I can. And if not, do it on video. And I like to jabber on about it over and over again and make sure I got all my pattern cut out. So I got to go into the darkness over here in the background. And I think that I've got all my pieces cut out. Excellent. This was number 2. I've got number 3 over here. Let's do some counting to make sure I got everything cut out and then run through. All right, everybody, cross your fingers with me. I know there's only a few of you left in here, but cross your fingers. Let's hope that this prototype comes together and is exactly what we need. I've got left side, right side, face, back, belly, head. Looks like we've got everything cut out. All right. Again with the all rights. Adjust my light so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to start off by sewing wedges together. I need to sew so my pencil is on the outside. And I have to make sure I do that so that I get the mirrored pieces where they need to be mirrored. Again, I am still using the white thread. Oh no, dang it. The white thread because it'll be easier to spot on my prototype in case I need to seam rip to make some adjustments. So if you are just now joining me, I am making a prototype of my plush, and that is why I'm not too worried about white showing up on black. I'm also using a wider stitch, as you can see, between each stitch. Well, maybe you can't see. It's a little bit too far away, but I'll show you in a minute. I am using a wider stitch because what I want it to do is I want it to show up when I do need to take it apart, if I need to take it apart. And normally I wouldn't be backstitching this part, but it's a very small wedge that I'm sewing together. So it's going to be easier to backstitch and make it work. So you can see I've got these really wide stitches that are very visible. And that is once again so that I can undo all this if I need to. For small adjustments here and there. Looks like I still need to change. You can see what I would really want is for this part, this part to be just a smooth loop. So what I'm going to wind up doing is having to cut both of these. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait until I take this piece off. I'm going to wind up cutting both of these pieces so that that curve is exactly how I want it to look. And then I'm going to lay that down on my pattern and use that to help finalize it. Here. Okay, so you can, I got all kinds of things falling. What is falling? My entire mess. Yep, you can see right here. If I were to just sew these two together, it would not be rounded on the top. There's a loop, or there's a round and a separate round with a basically cleavage, a crest, a valley, something like that. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm going to take both pieces, I'm going to attach them correctly. I've got the mark on the inside. Oops, I got the mark on the inside corner here and here. That's going to be my finished sewing point. So I want those to line up. And now when I put these together, I can cut and round it completely out. So let's go ahead. There's one half. Okay, now, I take a little bit extra sewing because this is just the prototype version of it. I can sew straight across and not have to worry about there being a valley. The downside is that for my pattern, right here, I now know that neither one of these sides are going to be what I want them to be. So I'm going to go ahead and try and lay it out. I'm going to quick pencil this in. Doing my very best to kind of round evenly. Then I will do the same thing over here. In fact, what winds up happening is because it's so small, it doesn't even look rounded. It just looks like a flat piece, which makes sense. So when you have that loss, now it lines up a little bit better. And if I had been paying attention, I would have done this pinched it together and saw that it actually did that problem. I just forgot to do this. But you can see it's such a subtle difference that you'd be surprised how much it changes when you sew the material together. So let me go ahead and cut that real quick. No, don't want it to be curved. Resist the habit. So that should line up a lot better now. I've got that cut. And it's cut on my prototype too, so that should be helpful. I'm trying to sew all my little butts together, all my little wedges. And that's a perfect example of what I was talking about, how when you're working on the prototype, you might have to cut something from it and then lay it out on top of your pattern. When I cut this one, it was a little bit off. That's just my cut. That's not part of the plan. That's just where I accidentally cut it. Come on. There we go. Whatever. Just got to make sure it's lined up appropriately. This happened because of the material. It didn't happen so much because of anything, the pattern's wrong. I don't know if you realized, but the other side was just fine. And that's because when I traced it, I just kind of messed up a little bit. It flexed on me. I shifted the pattern a little bit, stuff like that. So see, that's a smooth line. And that's what I really want. Now, let's see. What's my next piece? I've got the head, the body. Looks like I'm going to need to go ahead and take this off. I like to leave the pieces on because it gives me a little handle that I could pull on, but I'm not needing that right now as much. Okay. I'm going to, let's see. I can't remember exactly how I did everything. I'm trying to remember as I go. There's a lot of things that, like, for example, I just messed this up. Didn't I? No, I didn't. Okay, good. So the head doesn't sew on right here. This is not the two parts that sew on. So what I have to do is I have to sew on the belly first, which is my strip. So I'm going to pin all of this together. I'm just going to line the end of the mouth with the end of that strip because that's going to be part of the mouth. It's going to basically be the chin. I've mentioned before that you could base this. So anybody that's watching that is wondering if there are options here, I am following the line and I'm going to be taking it from the mouth down on both sides because I want it to stretch and flex the same way. What will happen is between the boot and the feed dogs, the bottom part of the material or the top part of the material might stretch as you're sewing. So what I'm going to want to do is make sure that it does it in the same direction both times. So when I sew the other side of this belly and the neck together, the throat and the belly, I will sew from the mouth down as well. But you can see what I'm doing is I'm moving this straight flat piece to follow the curve of my belly as I go, and I'm just pinning it in place, keeping the pins pretty close together because the curve is pretty, what's the word I'm looking? Profound? I was saying earlier, I need to read more. I need to write more. I have this idea of creating a horror story or a video game story that's kind of like cozy game farming and stuff like that. And I haven't started writing that at all. Sounds like somebody's home. So Chip is super excited. He's going to be really barky for a minute. Chip. Hey, Chip, it's okay. It's okay. He's so excited. Mommy's home. He's been doing really good about not barking nearly as much lately, so that's been fantastic. That might be because everybody's been staying in the other room. Hopefully it's not too loud. If it is too loud, let me know. Let's see. What did Foxy say? Dr. Pepper. I has Dr. So, I actually had to get Dr. Pepper today too. First off, I love Dr. Pepper, but I had to get that today in bottles because of the water main. So I can only drink a small amount of filtered water that we have after I boil it. So I have to have something I could drink in an emergency. Like, oh, I'm thirsty right now. Okay, sewing. I'm sewing a little bit slower because I know that this material is going to stretch on me and because I've got so many pins in place. And I also know that since this is still just a prototype, I have to be a little bit aware of a few things that might happen. Should be able to sew all the way down. Yeah, Foxy, I am a Dr. Pepper girl myself. I recently saw some posts that people were making on TikTok about how you can make your own at home. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to find one of these recipes. I'm going to save it and I'm going to try it. I get curious about stuff like that. And every now and then I'll get an idea up in my head and have to just try it out. Like I learned how to make poached eggs because I saw it online one day. Yep, I'm that guy. Okay, so the plan is that I'm going to sew on the left-hand side, which I usually don't do, to try and get this to stretch and flex the same as it did on the other side. It's okay, buddy. Wow. You're home? Did you have fun? I'm really glad to hear it. Sounds like you're eating my food. Are you eating my chips? He's already left the room. They're out in the back for the patio, letting the dog out now. Really? Let's see. What was that? I ran out yesterday. You ran out of Dr. Pepper yesterday. Really, as in like the recipe, Foxy? Is that what you're talking about? Seeing the recipes and wanting to make it at home? Or are you talking about me learning how to poach eggs? Because I know that I said a lot of things just kind of randomly there. Now, when I've sewed this part, the good thing is I can go ahead and keep sewing. Oh, what happened? Where's my... Oh, no! So I accidentally, you can see right here, I accidentally sewed part of my belly together. Dang it. Let me go ahead and just cut that. I'm going to have to fix this now. I'm going to cut that at both sides. That's hilarious. I hadn't done that in a long time. Essentially, it folded over. So it's a real easy fix this time. But if I was doing this with the funnel material, it'd be a problem. No, what were you asking? What about strawberries? Are they ready to be eaten? I don't know. They probably should go a little bit longer. I think they will. I don't know for sure. Yeah, that's fine. If you want to eat them, go ahead and eat them. Okay. We are trying to grow some strawberries, and we got some pre-planted from the local garden place. I'm not sure what words to use. Oh, no. Okay, there we go. And we are looking to see if they're going to be any good. They have some fruit on them. Yeah, that was ready. All right, awesome. They're just tiny little strawberries, but they're starting. That means something. Okay. If there's cold water, there should be another mug in there as well if you want to use that. Again, because our water main broke, that we can't just rinse off our strawberries. We have to go through all these extra steps to get everything taken care of. All right, so what I'm trying to do right here is I'm going to go ahead and undo a few of these pins, and I'm going to show you why. What I would like to do is line up the butt on both sides so that when I get done sewing, I can just continue sewing across. So there we go. That should also make it even with the belly. So what'll happen now is, and this is something to keep in mind as well, when you are pinning two pieces together, you might inadvertently stretch out one side further than the other. So these two line up right here. You can see that lines up. Well, if I accidentally stretch it, it doesn't line up the same way. So what you may want to do, depending on what kind of project you're doing, like in this case, I've got my neck, the mouth all the way down the neck, and then I want the butt to line up. You might consider lining up the opposite side. That way you know that as you're pinning this, you just have to kind of adjust. And if you want it being too tight, you can always start undoing some pins like I just did, and then just start repinning. It is definitely important on certain circumstances when you have to have things lined up. I was talking about my snake blanket that I had to undo. That was the problem I had. I accidentally forgot to pin the front and the back together, and I wound up going through and ran out of snake before I ran out of blanket. So I had this big hole, and I had to go back through. And since I sewed it, I had to undo it all. It wasn't just that I forgot to pin the front and back. I completely failed to pin it all. So I wound up having this whole section that wound up being a failure because of that. Sorry, I was so close to the camera because I dropped a piece. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and pin all the way up to the back. So when I sew this, if I have done anything appropriately, I can sew all the way down from the neck to the butt. Well, I guess technically from the neck to the back cap. Back cap. Why does it sound so funny to say? I'm going to go a little bit slower because I'm a little bit less practiced at sewing on the left-hand side. And as you can see, I have to hold my hands completely different to get that. And it's not something that's super difficult, it's just not as easy. And as I showed earlier, I'm a little ambidextrous, but not quite as steady with it. And so far, it doesn't seem like anything's caused a problem, but I'll have to look and see. Just like with the other side, I may have sewn into the belly somehow. I am back stitching because this is going to be a part that I have to sew another part onto. And let's get all my pins out. I know I'm going to have to sew the other side again because if you remember, I just broke the belly down because I accidentally sewed it in half. And that should be a pretty easy fix. Right about here. I'm going to go ahead and pin it just in case so I don't do the same thing. If you feel safe with the water.
I have to. I have to have clothes from work.
Okay. Just wash it on cold.
Okay, just when the water's on.
Yeah, you should be able to leave it on tap cold. I fixed it. Yeah, along with all that, I realized that the hot and cold was mixed up on our washer, so I had to fix that today too. So for the longest time, we could not get cold water, and it turned out because they were opposite, and the machine balances no matter what you do, so it was constantly throwing hot water into everything, and we didn't understand what was happening. Oh no! See, I tried to pin this, and I wound up doing the exact same thing. How did that happen? I literally pinned it so it wouldn't do that. That's aggravating. Come on. Fix and then do not do again. If you do that one more time, you are grounded, mister. Jeez. All right. Super pin it. Double check it. Triple check it. Pin. Nope. All the way back. Need that to stay all the way back. All the way back. Goofy little things. At least when you see me doing this, you get a combination of things like, hey, this guy makes mistakes too. And hey, that's how I fix it. I am not happy about making mistakes. But at least nothing is so irreparable. Right now, I've got a belly with all kinds of extra thread. Strawberry lemonade is good too. Fair strawberries are the best. They are delicious. We also have a big chunk of watermelon. I meant to tell you to bring your watermelon with you. Let's see. Watermelon lemonade. Yes. Watermelon lemonade is delicious. I don't know. I think that you just said strawberry lemonade, strawberry water lemonade, all that stuff. Okay. Now we have front, the back. I think what I'm going to try and do is I'm really torn on how I want this to look. I'm going to go ahead and sew the head on, and I'm going to leave the opening for the ears, and I'm going to try and get this wedge that we added to work before I sew on the back cap. Because if I'm right, what will happen is I will sew here, I will open it up, and this will leave a nice circle section right here. I had the tree for 5 years. It's been giving them for 3. I haven't got... How come you haven't gotten any lemons off your tree? I had to buy a plant because that's all I crave was when I... That's so funny. Fresh strawberries. I love strawberries. Yes. So many in my backyard. Poached eggs are the bane of my existence. There is a trick to using a strainer, a colander. with your poached eggs. You get the water to a rolling boil, you turn it off, you got your colander, and you shake that out, and it separates the membrane. And then when you use the colander, you dip the whole colander in and poach the egg that way. Give that a try, see if it works. You may have to Google it to find out what I'm talking about, but I found it on a TikTok video, did it, and it worked. And I was like, oh, it wasn't special to me. I'm going to be honest. After I did it, I was like, I'm only going to use this to impress people, but I don't really care. I also made cloud eggs. And I know that we've kind of bounced from the egg conversation to the lemon conversation. I think you said you have a lemon tree. Is that correct, Catbee? And it also sounded like you've been getting lemons from it, but haven't got any. Is that because everybody else is stealing them or because of wasps? Peach tree. Oh, man, I want to get a peach tree so bad. Actually, I want to get a peach tree and then graft on different fruit like strawberries and cherries. Not strawberries, cherries. Other stone fruit, apricot. And I know how to graft. I just haven't sat down to do it with anything. Let's see. It looks like if you look here, right about where the back of my head is right about where that wedge that I added, that little triangle. So that looks like that's almost perfect. And that's just because I was able to sew it on, disassemble, and then update my pattern that way. So I should be able to sew directly down and stop at the head, or the crest of the head. I'm going to leave the opening for the ear again. Oh, dear. Damn. So now I'm starting to wonder what you can do to keep the deer out. I know that deer are sensitive to certain smells. So you may be able to buy like bear urine and spray it around. Let's see. This is the back of the ear now. Yeah, I'm not going to backstitch. I'm hoping I didn't just screw myself up. There we go. I was thinking about backstitching, but I realized how close to it I was and that I couldn't do that. What is this pin? This pin is... What pin is this? I don't know what this is holding together. Oh, that's the top. Okay, I see. That is so to make sure that okay. Sorry, I got myself lost, a little bit confused. Now I got to make sure that my wedge does not sew under like my belly did. There's a whole lot of things that happen because I haven't done this before. And it becomes a little bit of guesswork in the process because I'm trying to remember what I've got. I haven't seen it finished. I'm going to go ahead and take this pin out as well. Now the next piece I should be able to sew all the way down. Directly across that same spot so I can pin here. Sew on the left-hand side again. I got to get all this extra thread out of my way because it is very confusing. Come on. Yeah, so what happened was I have a combination of the ends of the thread, a little bit of weird sewing, and where I skipped a section. So that's why I've got all this loose thread all over the place. I'm just trying to get it out of the way so I don't confuse myself as I start sewing again. Whenever I'm doing a final piece, I tend to cut this stuff off as well. But right here, since I'm usually not too concerned with a lot of those kinds of details. Detriment for Bass Pro, I have a fence. I don't know what else to do. I don't know what to do for that. I wonder if there are a few things that you can do. Hey, Bobby, happy Wednesday. Bobby has been actually, now that I think about it, Bobby's been joining quite a bit as well. I think Bobby's even taught me a couple things, mentioned a few ideas, things that I can change. Let's see if I can get this to work just right. Again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew to the front of the ear. I'm going to stop. I'm going to skip to over here. If I've got this pretty evened, then what's going to happen is I'll be able to sew down the back of the head. It'll match up with the wedge that we've added today. And I should be able to sew all the way to the end of that wedge. So here is the bottom crest of the top cap, the head cap. I am, in case you're curious, putting my pins all the way back so that none of this gets in here. I should be able to follow that all the way down. That looks like it's lined up pretty nicely. And I'm just going to put an extra pin right there. So I should be able to sew all the way to the back. So I'm going to sew all the way down and get I'm going to keep my ear here so I can see it. And all this extra thread. That's from all the mess ups that I had when I was trying to sew the belly. Get these extra pieces out of here. Look at that. Look at that tangled mess. I blame Vance. For anybody who doesn't know, Vance is my son. Okay. This has got success written all over it. I can feel it in my bones. In my bones. All the way up. Slide this over. Start at the back of the ear again. Get everything lined up so I can follow my edge. Will it with me, everybody. I'm going to stop right here-ish. Well, let's see. I don't want to backtrack because that's going to tangle up my thread. Come on. Now I can back stitch. Here's the hope, everybody. What's going to happen is we're going to take this apart. I'm going to take the pins out. I'm going to cut some of this extra thread. And then I'm going to try and line up the back cap, which we have already sewn together, and see if there's much adjustment that needs to be done. But my hope is that this will wind up being a good circle. So I backstitched a little bit here because at this end I'm going to be doing a lot of work and I have to get it to sew on. Normally I wouldn't backstitch on the prototype, but right here and right here I did because I want it to be just a little bit more sturdy where I'm working. And this material is so weak that it's just a little bit of a backup while I'm trying to test this because I'm also not 100% sure this is going to do what I want. But look at that. If I were to stuff that up, you could see that that's going to form a pretty decent circle, which is what we're aiming for. Oh, I forgot to sew these two pieces together. So close. Okay, so now once I get this sewn on, that should be roughly put on the right-hand side. Got most of this lined up. This is not a perfect piece because of the prototype. Okay. So now I've got this circle, which should be my back cap. And then I should be able to line up my ends. I'm going to pin the circle parts. Now, what I could do if this winds up working is I could always sew this part on and then this part on and then just sew all the way down the back, which will probably be a way easier way to assemble this. But it's also not something I thought of until this exact moment. That's roughly what I did when I was sewing my houndor snout on. Trying to keep this far enough away from the camera for it to not get too blurry. I'm probably going to have to round that bottom a little bit, which is fine. It's a small adjustment, but I will see how it actually sits when we put it together. It looked like it actually took the shape that I really wanted it to, so that's helpful. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and pin the back side as well so that I know that that lines up. Kind of like I was talking about with the belly and the butt, how I wanted to pin them in place so that as material flexed and stretched, it would still be where I needed it to go. And this should help me also determine if I need to make some adjustments to the outer side shape. A little bit at a time, do my best to line it up. And it's a little bit big. You see right here, there's a lot of excess. I'm going to check to make sure if it does the same thing on the other side or if that's just because one side is not as evenly cut as the other. And I'll also do some planned adjusting by kind of sliding the pieces around a little bit. So there's a combination of things that may have to be done in order to get that to fit a little bit better. I keep seeing right here, there's this weird edge, and it's that corner right where that new triangle is. So what may have to happen is I will adjust and round that out a little bit, which again, not unexpected, just didn't think of it. Okay. Now what I'm trying to do is work both sides at about the same time to see if I can get the material to be the right length as each other, as the side. But it looks like this is just going to be too big. Again, not unexpected, just part of the learning curve. When I made the bellies of my possums, I went through this exact same thing and had to adjust my pattern so many, just teeny tiny little cuts, teeny tiny little shape. Make one circle a little bit smaller than the other. But I was able to make it kind of fit. You can see there's a lot less excess here. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to this side and do the same thing. I'll do just a little bit of adjusting. I'm definitely going to make it smaller. But if I can get close enough right now with just these little shifts, it'll be enough for me to say how much smaller I need to make it. Oof. Vance is a little upset that he's got to get a towel bath today because of our water not being completely cleaned out yet. And I can hear him yelling in the back. All right, just going to run this right on through. Oh no, I just realized that that's going to leave that open. The part that I wanted to leave open, I will be sewing shut. Well, that's fine. We're just going to do this part. Ah, dang it. I already know the mouth fits, so I will leave a part of the mouth open whenever I sew that. If I remember correctly, this part right here, I was going to leave open at the back triangle. But I don't think that's going to be what happens for this prototype, and I'm going to have to fill through the mouth. Right now, I'm kind of making sure that I can get this at least stretched across enough to make sure. Too big is fine. I can always cut smaller. But I have to make sure that it fits really close to the circle that I've got planned so that I can see what it looks like when it's filled up. Eek, just a little bit at a time here. Okay.
She can watch in my room.
Sorry, I'm trying to focus really hard on not stabbing myself and making sure this material also does not fold under when I'm sewing. I'm trying to keep it lined up. I'm sorry, baby. I can't talk right now. Give me just a moment. I'll ask you what you were saying. I wasn't trying to ignore you. Yeah, just for a little bit at least. Get that out of the way. Sorry, there's a lot of silence here because I'm trying to do several things. See, it's gotten caught up, and I don't know if it's caught up because of a needle or because of the thread itself. I need to get this out of the way. Oh. Just had to force it through just a little bit, but that's okay. I'll do a back stitch, just enough to hold that in place. Okay, now. Get this all undone. From here, should be able to move stuff out of my way. I will sew the face on later, the mouth on later. But if I can get this stitched up right now, that should be enough for us to look at everything. You know what? Maybe I should just go ahead and sew the mouth on right now. If I sew the mouth on right now, then I can really see how most of this works. I'll just use the ears. That's right. I still got the ears that I can use to pull everything out. So this way I can maybe get a final look. Okay.
I eat food in my room.
Once I get out, I don't want you eating by yourself, okay?
No, my mommy.
I've got, let me go ahead and stitch that closed. It just didn't quite make it all the way to the corner.
Papa,
Yes, sir?
you eat in mommy's room?
No, I'm not eating in mommy's room.
No, you eat in my room.
Eat in your room? Dang it. I'm going to have to backstitch it. All I want to do is get that corner to stay in place. And that way I can make sure that the mouth, the face, is going directly onto what it needs to go to.
Mom's gonna make it out. I'm gonna take a super quick shower.
Okay.
Papa, watch me.
You wanna put it in right now?
Papa, you watch
You'll have to wait, baby. I'm almost done for the night, though.
what?
Yep. I'm sorry. I'm a horrible person.
I'm hungry.
Yeah, I know you're hungry because you want to be hungry, not because you are hungry. Yeah. Just fed him. I promise this child is not starved. Just a big baby. You're just a big baby. Okay, you're not a baby.
You're a baby.
I'm a baby. Yeah, your whole face is a baby.
I'm not me.
Not you.
I knew last night. I
The good thing is, since I remember those ears, I can actually just run through this. And if I can just get it in place and sew it, we'll be able to see what almost the entire body will look like. It looks like I may have made a mistake when I put this together. No, that's still part of the... Oh, okay, I wasn't quite there. This one, again, with the whole trying to fill in a circle, I have to make sure that parts of it stretch and parts of it don't.
don't know. No, I'm not done.
And I already know that this fits because I just did it. Now, I'm pretty sure that I did not adjust my mouth so much that this shouldn't fit. I know I did a little bit of a change, but that wasn't very much. So now I'm just kind of hoping that I can get it to roughly the same shape again. Some extra pins. I started putting them away before I realized I was going to do this. We're reaching the end of the day. It's getting pretty late. And I'm realizing I'm hungry again. I got to stop eating once a day. I got to start paying more attention to food. I get so busy. I don't know if anybody else is like this, working on a project, just doing anything during the course of your day, and suddenly the day is gone and I forgot to eat. Okay. Run this right on. Oh, dang it. Sometimes I cut my thread a little bit too short. That's just a weird habit as well. And make sure I don't get any of my extra pieces in the way here, especially how close to the face I am. I don't want to get the ears caught up in it, which are the most likely part to get caught up. If you are moving your piece around, always keep your needle down so it keeps your material where you want it instead of having to readjust multiple things. Just a little bit more, and then we can right side this out. I can run through and stuff it, and we can see how close to our final version we actually are. My hope is that this is going to nail it. And even if it doesn't, the last things I saw that might be a problem are mostly just making sure a couple things are not as wide around or having a little bit of an angle on them, like at that wedge. There we go. There we go. Did I just drop a needle? I saw one. Oh, no. This is something else. That's not a needle. Don't be a needle. Okay, good. Yes, that was risky. Squeezing the whole thing to see if there's a needle in there. Yes, that was definitely risky. Don't do that. I realized it the second I started squeezing. I was like, this is dumb. Right, so all of it's sewn together. It looks like it's taken a lot of the shape that I want. I've got a hole in the ear where I'm going to pull everything through. And everybody keep your fingers crossed, like I mentioned. I hope you've had your fingers crossed and your breaths held this whole time. Anybody who chose to watch but did not do those things, it is your fault if it fails, I promise. I was perfect. I did nothing wrong. No matter how many times it looked like I did several things wrong, that's just a trick of the light. I'm going to try and pull out my fluff just a little bit extra. A little bit of extra room here. All my trash out of the way. This, with any kind of luck, will be the last prototype you have to make. The legs are super easy. I'm not even going to make prototypes of the legs, I don't think. I'm going to draw that up how I want it. And even if the one that we make live together isn't perfect, it's going to be enough for me to be able to see everything that I need and then decide afterwards if I want to change the pattern and make that part of the machine sewn on section. I also might do a little bit of research to find out maybe there's another way to attach pieces to a plush. See, right here, I've got a little bit that's coming loose. I probably should have backstitched right there as well, just enough to support it. I have put this material into like 3 different prototypes. So it's starting to kind of act like it doesn't want to be fluffy anymore. Okay, our belly or our back cap looks like it may have done pretty well. It looks like I missed a few stitches, but that's okay. We'll get over that. If I were to be using a final piece, the final material, I would just hand stitch that if I needed to, or I would just run it right back through the sewing machine. I'm doing small amounts because I'm trying to reduce the wear and tear on the ear section. That part that I mentioned that wasn't backstitched, it's already starting to have some problems. And if I can avoid it tearing completely on me, that would be great. And it's not that it's even tearing, it's that the stitch wasn't in there and it's just coming out. One day I would love to see how a professional plush maker makes their plushes from new designs. I'm curious as to how close this is, or if they have math that they do, or if they maybe make a 3D prototype out of, we'll say like foam board or something like that, and then they just fit the material over it and keep cutting it until it fits. I know that I've seen people do that kind of thing with like furry suits or animals of different types. That's basically how a stuffed animal is. You know, when you get what's the word I'm looking for? Taxidermy. When you do taxidermy, they fit the material over a prop. Of course, in my case, I'm not making a prop each time because I'm making like several different plushes during the course of like a month and a week. I don't really want to make one at a time that takes a month to make. Okay, so as long as I round out these parts right here a little bit, that should be good. My neck seems to be doing okay. I might change the length on the back a bit. I had already talked about how I have to make the outer edge of that back cap a little bit shorter. So that might be how I do it, is make it a little bit closer to the back, a little bit more narrow. Got a lot of space here. There's a lot of this that really looks like it's taken the exact shape that I want. Where's my ear at? There it is. And the good news is when I use the actual material, the fuzz changes the shape of it. The accuracy of the pattern that I can cut changes the shape of it. It does clean it all up quite a bit. So those are all good things as far as when I kind of get to that next step. But I think we've gotten pretty darn close to what we are aiming for. Let's pull this ear back out. I think that's pretty darn close. Let me see. Let me get my comparison here. I don't even mind that because the way that that's shaped, the cap slightly overlaps. And if I overfill this, that's going to be pretty good. I don't have to adjust this. I might round that corner out just a tiny bit. But it looks like the way that this is shaped, if I adjust the head a little bit maybe, I think I remember now that I wanted to move the head back a little bit. Stay. There we go. Here is the sketch. And here is my plush. Yeah, if I move that back, change the arch of the back just a little bit, I might shorten the neck right here just a little bit. But I think right here works really well. I think that even though this shows a little bit more flat, when I round this out a little bit better in the final material, this will be a little bit more smooth and flattened. It won't have this little bump. We've got a nice rounded backside. So basically what I would do is cut it or change the shape so instead of being out, it's a little bit back more. I think I've got it going down the head a little bit more like I wanted. I might make the circle a little bit smaller. I'll add that lip that I've been talking about right here so that I have it so it looks like a mouth. The ear is an easy adjustment. When I moved the head forward a little bit by bringing that forehead down, I actually moved the whole top of the head forward a little bit too. Yes, I think so too. Thank you so much, Cappy. I think that the Minky is going to help with a lot of the little adjustments that I need. This is probably the only one that I'm considering as a full adjustment is that back a little bit. But another thing I could maybe do is instead just kind of sew right in here so it creates that curve. But I think that if I shortened this by just a fraction of an inch, right there, it shouldn't adjust anything else too much. But if I shorten the back, not the front, it should pull just a little bit more backwards. I really think that a lot of this will work. If I make the mouth just a little bit smaller, it will bring it down some more. If I had the eye here, that's not too far off. I mean, if I were to put, let me see. I've got my pencil here. There we go. If I were to put the eye right about there, I kind of think that, well, let me turn this light off. Yeah. I kind of think that that's pretty much right where I want it, right underneath the ear. There might be a little bit more space where I can curve this down a little bit. And I'll go ahead and write that. You know what? I'll just write that down on my little pattern. I'm going to do those 2 adjustments. And in fact, I could even make the back of my neck adjustment in a way so that maybe what I'll do is, yeah. Since this is it, if I cut a little wedge, I can bring it down. No, if I cut a wedge, it'll change the shape. So what I'll have to do is just make this just a little bit shorter right here, or right here, actually. So let's go ahead and write that down. Shorten that. And then, let's see, if I bring the head down a little bit more. That'll help. I may have to bring the circle down a little bit too, but I think if I leave the circle where it's at, I kind of like this position. And then if I bring that down, it'll just make the mouth a little bit smaller, which will be fine. Stand up. Stand up because I want you to. Stand up because you believe in yourself. Yeah, so if I adjust that just a tiny bit, that'll bring the forehead down. I might make that a little bit smaller, but I'm not sure if I need to. In fact, no, I'm going to leave that the same length that it is. I think that bulking out will be a good change too. So I've only got these 2 little adjustments. This rounded out nicely. This has got a nice little shape to it. The cap over here, so I just need to make this smaller. Let me write that down as well. Where did I just put my pattern? There it is. So I'm going to make the outside smaller. And then that should be it. I will do a quick, simple trace of this for the ear. And I will do the bottom side of the ear. And I'll probably do that as a dark brown. I'll do all of this as the cream tan brown. I will do red and red so that I can add the white spots to it. And then we will decide if we want to do the legs in the tan or the dark. But I will get most of this put together hopefully over the course of the weekend because I'm really liking this. I'm really happy with this. I'll do dark brown here and we'll do dark brown for the mouth. Unless you guys think I should use another color. Maybe the color will depend on what type of mushroom we use. So would create the back. What are you talking about? When you said so will create the back, I'm not sure what you mean. I think what you're talking about is if I were to sew it here, or if you're talking about this, I'm not 100% sure. But we'll find out. I'm going to start putting the last of this together. And with a little bit of luck, I do think that if I add the curve, I won't make it shorter. So that's good. I could possibly make the curve of the head a little bit further back. But I like the rest of this shape, so I think I'm just going to avoid doing that. I'm just going to make this a little bit shorter to bring it down. But I really think this turned out pretty darn close to what we're aiming for. If you guys have any thoughts in it, let me know. This is going to be the end of the stream. So if you think about it, just send me a message, comment on it when I kind of post here in a little while. I think that if with luck, I will have the final version of it put together, but I may do that all live. I may cut out the pieces and just do the live work. The neck curve, take thread and sew 2 stitch and should pull it back. Yeah, I thought about that too. Basically just kind of tighten and pull and then sew it over. And that might be a good idea too, but my worry is whether or not that'll cause bunched up ripples. Like, see, like right there when I kind of pull it in, I'm a little worried it might do the same thing here. And that might look cute, but it also might not it wouldn't make me think of mushroom. And for right now, I'm thinking of this as the stem of the mushroom. But it is one of those things I can definitely consider as an option once I get that final version together. I could probably even do that live, like sew in there, pull, run it through the machine, and then that'll give it a nice curve. So it's definitely an option too. Closer to the circle where this here. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm thinking too, is somewhere in there is where I'm going to do it. If I do it right here, this is where that triangle wedge is, where that part is. So I should be able to just kind of shorten right around here, and that should bring it in. So basically I'll do that, and then I will draw it up. Like I will probably just go ahead and leave that folded so that I know what I'm looking at. Just enough to bring it in and then change. Yeah. So the good news is we're both on the same page. We're kind of looking at it the same way. And then with this one, I'll just make that outer side a little bit shorter. I will measure it, cut it, and then make sure that I didn't cut the same length by changing the shape of it. I do also think that if I cut it a little bit shorter at the front, I will get that more of an oval shape that I'm wanting. This isn't bad. This is actually really good. But if I do that, it'll help with the shape that I wanted. All right, excellent. Bobby, Seal, Catbee, Foxy, thank you guys so very much for coming in. I really hope you guys had some fun. I think it was Seal that was afraid their battery was going to die. Thank you guys. Remember, send me a message, follow me, like what's going on. I'm going to find a way to do this as a giveaway for people that have liked, followed, shared, all that stuff, especially for people that have been making it into the views. So I really appreciate everything. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you either Monday or the next time I do some impromptu lives. Hopefully I'll be doing some mice on some random live one day. All right. Thank you again. Good night.